Hey there, family and friends. Welcome to another installment of my YouTube channel. I'm Chaplain Cy Ali. First of all, I want to thank all the subscribers that I have. At last count, I believe I'm at over 700 subscribers. I'm very blessed. And thank you. And I hope to keep the content of this channel engaging. But tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about my professional wrestling days. But before we do that, I want to send up some prayers to everybody on the West Coast, and us included here in the state of Washington. Folks, these fires are raging out here. And I know you may see it on the news, but that doesn't do it any justice to see this stuff live and in person and in color. Just over the ridge from where we're at here in Puyallup, Washington, we're on Crystal Ridge. So we're on a ridge, and then there's a valley, and then there's another ridge. East of us, the hillside was covered in flames earlier in the week, and we were kind of worried here, thinking that we were going to have to evacuate. Praise God, the fire folks got a hold of that fire, and now we're just socked in with smoke from every direction, eastern Washington, Oregon, California, and I believe there's even some fires north of us in maybe southern British Columbia. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it's been pretty raggedy out here. So I'm praying for everybody on the West Coast, praying for your safety, praying that we get some rain at some point, because it's been so dry here. Wanted to say that before we even got going on the fun stuff of my professional wrestling career. Now, for some of those of you who may not know me, that you're new to my channel, I am a minister, I am a chaplain. But I had a recent calling into ministry. I've been ordained since 2018. I got ordained to marry because some couples asked me to marry him. I was flattered by that, but I had no idea that God would come for me earlier this year and say, hey, you're actually going to be on the road to ministry. So I'm really blessed with that. I have a military background. I was in the Air Force. I had two different stints. I was in the Air Force right out of high school from 1979 to 86. And then I went back into the military in 99 and then got out in 2000. 2003, I was in the Air National Guard. So I got about 11 years total. One of the strange rides, and I've had a very colorful background. I've been an extra in like 4 or 5 movies. I was a model for an early part of my life. But then I was always, folks, I'm a dreamer. I've been a dreamer since a young kid. I dreamt I was going to be this superhero. I dreamt I was going to be an airline pilot, and I dreamt I was going to be a professional wrestler. But out of all 3 of those, I became a professional wrestler. From 1986, I got trained in New Haven, Connecticut. By Tony Altimore. The gym was called Passerello's Quest. I was trained up there, and then in 86, I gravitated back to my home area of Pittsburgh, PA. Even though I lived, north of that, but I lived in Pittsburgh after I got out of the military. And that's kind of how my professional wrestling career blossomed. And I traveled all over the East Coast, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Indiana, Illinois. And I'll tell anybody, that is the most fun I've ever had in my life. Being a performer in wrestling in front of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people. I can't begin to tell you the feeling when I walk through that door or curtain, and if I have music and hear your music hit and just hear these fans, they either were booed you or they cheered you and loved you. Did a lot of different characters, so I actually was booed and I was beloved, so I was at both sides of the spectrum. Initially, as King Farouk Ali, I played an Egyptian prince. So I came up with the name Youngblood, and I wrestled as Cy Youngblood for quite a while. And then I did a really flashy gimmick, a Jumpin' Jack Flash. I did the Chocolate Playboy. I threw out Hershey's Kisses to the women and the ladies in the crowd. And then I was the Iraqi Assassin. That was probably the most heat I got out of any character, because I had the Iraqi flag, I had the prayer rug, and when you're wrestling, places like West Virginia and some places in Ohio, the things I hear from the crowd, I had to get a dictionary to figure out what these people were calling me. It was ludicrous. And performing in front of crowds was a joy to me, and I was a pretty shy kid. I don't know if I was withdrawn, but I was certainly shy. I wasn't really outgoing as a kid. And then when I got into the military, I became a power lifter. So then I kind of got used to at least competing in front of a lot of people. And I was kind of a character in powerlifting, throwing the chalk and sniffing the ammonia caps and just kind of, I was pretty strong. And that's kind of how I thought I was physically blessed enough to get into professional wrestling. I had the physique for it. I didn't have a bunch of weight. I wasn't as big as some of those guys in the WWF, but I was very athletic. And I had a ring style about me that was very conducive, to work with a lot of other guys and work different programs. I really loved it, and I've got so many stories. Be a couple here tonight. When I was wrestling as the Chocolate Playboy, I think I was in Greensburg, PA, which is just east of Pittsburgh, and it was a big crowd that night, and I was throwing out Hershey's Kisses, and maybe I should have bought another bag because it was a big crowd, and I know I ran out. And there was a sweet grandmotherly type woman in the third row. And I threw it and she didn't catch it and another woman got it. And then I didn't have any more. And she got up and she stood up and she said it loud enough that I heard her in the ring. She said, "Next time, buy some more chocolate, you cheap bastard." Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, I scooted out of the bottom rope and I went over to give her a hug because I thought it was so crazy. And I gave her a hug and I went to go kiss her on the cheek and she put her face right in front of me and she kissed me in the mouth. This woman was about 80 years old. I'm not even fabricating her age. She was quite old and she kissed me in the mouth and I believe she tongued me. And everybody around started clapping and I said, "You know what, ma'am, well done." She said, "Yeah, I got you." Scooted back up into the ring and started the show. This is the type of stuff that I would deal with the fans. And I really loved that. I loved the interaction with the fans. Some nights, depending on what gimmick I did, it got a little hairy. And I was wrestling. I mean, I'll throw out some of the names that I wrestled with. A lot of the guys were local out of Pittsburgh, like T.C. Reynolds, my buddy Tom Buzanowski, who wrestled as the American Patriot. Preston Steele, my buddy from Trumbull County. He was Pete Lucic was actually a Trumbull County sheriff. He wrestled as Preston Steele. My manager when I was a heel was Earl Siegel, who went under the name of Dr. Sam Siegel, sadistic Dr. Sam Siegel, the famous neurosurgeon. And we just lost Earl, God bless his soul, last year. A very close friend of mine, very dear friend. These folks became family members to me. Gentleman James Folger, my buddy Dave Flick, who is a well-versed actor out of the Pittsburgh area. And Dave, I got goosebumps when I was flying to Peru a handful of years ago and I was watching the TV on Delta and I was watching Concussion. And Dave had such a nice part in that movie. I was so proud of him. I shouted in the business class, "That's my friend." And there was charming Chuck Lewis. There was King Kalua when I got up to USWF, Larry Winters, Kid USA, The Sheik. There was so many guys that I enjoyed working with. We literally just became a big family. One night I was wrestling in Conneaut, Ohio, and I was wrestling as the Iraqi Assassin. And the promoter for that show was Joe Catanzaretti. And Joe went by his nickname was Pizza Joe because Joe owned all these pizza shops around Youngstown, Ohio. I adored Joe, man. He could have easily been in The Sopranos. He didn't even have to be auditioned. I'd have put him right in there with Tony Soprano. Loved him. And so he loved that Sheik gimmick, the Iraqi Assassin gimmick that I was doing. So I did it, and I was working my buddy T.C. Reynolds as the American Patriot. It was some nights, when you can get on the crowd's nerves and you can just work them and get the heat. And I got the heat in this building. They were just fit to be tied with me, and I was just egging them on more and more. So it was 5 minutes in the ring before Tommy's music even hit, and he came out. And he said he hit that door, and it was one of the loudest pops he got as a babyface because they were so agitated with me. And Tommy and I worked so well together. We just knew each other. We can just say a couple of words in the ring and then we're off to the races. But he was going over that night, meaning he was going to win. And then he said, "Si, after this, after I pin you real quick, you're going to be really upset. I'm going to go over in the corner and I'm going to be high-fiving people." He was like, "Get that Iraqi flag and just give me a whap across the back with it." I said, "Tommy, you better feel the pole." It was a wooden pole. And he was like, "That's fine. Just make sure you get it so you can hear it." So he pinned me. The crowd goes crazy. And then I get the flag out of the corner and I get him and I go, whap. and you can hear the snap. And he actually sold it so well, but I left like a diagonal mark of the pole on his back. And then the crowd went berserk. They were starting to charge down to the ring. And Tommy, he's like, you better get out of the ring. You better get out. So I fight my way back to the locker room, and he didn't come too much further behind me. We were hugging back. We were like, good show, man. It's always good to work with you, brother. And then Joe comes back. His eyes are like saucers. He was like, Cy, you got to get out. I didn't even get a chance to get a shower. He said, you got to get out of here. These people were ready to tear the joint down. So he brought a couple of his sheriffs. I think it was Ashtabula County sheriffs. I think that's Conneaut, Ohio. Sheriffs come back and they're like, yeah, we got to get you out of here. They're like, where's your car? And my car, and I rolled it, somebody got the keys and put the car right at the door. And then I was escorted out of Conneaut, Ohio by 2 sheriffs. Joe passed earlier this year. God bless his soul. He was phenomenal. And he winks at me on the way out. And it's like, dude, beautiful job, beautiful job. I enjoyed playing a heel. I mean, I think most people would say they enjoy playing a heel because it's pretty easy to get the heat. Sometimes these people are seeing you for the first time and you don't have the storylines. You don't have TV setting up your live events. So as a babyface, as a good guy, I found that more challenging to work. And when my music hits and I'm going down and say as Sergeant Cy Youngblood, which was like the last character I did in my career, with the American music and my military uniform and that, I had to go out and engage with the crowd to make sure that they got behind me. So it was harder, I think. Some of my friends might, beg to differ with me, but I thought it was much easier being a heel because all you got to do is get heat. And, you make the face look good, and then you got your spots, you're working, you get, if you're tired, you get a rest hold and you're working the crowd. I mean, there's a method to it. And the one thing that I learned early on was ring psychology. You have to be able to tell a story in the ring. You are literally like the conductor of a band, and the crowd is, at your beck and call. When you want them to be up, they're up. When you want them to be a little bit mellow, they're mellow, things like that. And that's how the business works. Well, as a big group, Dr. Sam Siegel he had a big Bonneville station wagon. This was back in the late 80s. And it was back, those type of station wagons where you had the seats way in the back. So we can fit maybe like 7 or 8 guys comfortably, unless we really had some big super heavyweights, and then it might have been a little bit more difficult. But we can fit 8 guys with all of our gear, all of our bags, travel bags and things like that comfortably. And we traveled on the road as a group. But some of us had to hide when we got into these towns because it's a thing called kayfabe, meaning you want folks to think that it's a real thing, but really it's not. So when we got into these towns, we would have to kind of separate. So make sure that the heels can come in together, then the faces can come in together. And we normally, like early on, we didn't go out and eat or drink together as a group. We would kind of separate. But after a while, when I think we believed that the fans were getting a little bit smart to the business, then some of the times we had functions where we would be out as a group just having fun together. But a lot of times we would separate, coming in and leaving out of a town, just to make sure that we weren't giving the business away, so to speak. Just enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I had so much fun. I can probably sit and talk about this for ages. Be wrestling with some of the legends, because Bruno Sammartino was my childhood hero. And then, it was funny that life comes full circle, that I met Bruno. I was actually working his son, David, outside of, I think this was in Pittsburgh as well. And Bruno was there. And I put David over because David had more of a name, but he knew I was athletic and he was athletic. So we really had a great match. We were just bouncing each other all over the ring and doing really in sync, high spots and going, he body slammed me off the top rope and I'd take a big bump and, I would just toss him around. So we worked pretty good for about 18, 19 minutes and then he went over. And then Bruno came back to the dressing room and I was awed. I was like, Bruno. I gave him a hug. He's like, hey, young man. I said, you know what? You were responsible for getting me into the wrestling business. And he smiled. He was like, look, you have a great ring presence. He was like, He was like, I thoroughly enjoyed watching you and David wrestle out there. You guys, you know, the way it looked like you two had worked each other before. And really, that wasn't the case. That was the first night I had worked David San Martino. But I worked him a couple more times after that. And we just had great matches. So sometimes you really have that chemistry with another wrestler. And being in sync and your moves, your timing, your arm drags, your drop kicks and things like that. It's a thing of beauty when you are on with your partner. That's the way it was with me and TC Reynolds, with Preston Steele, with Jesse the Madman Celica. Jesse's out in, Mike Ward, he's out in Denver, and he had the Ozzy Osbourne hair. And when I got him in the turnbuckle or something, his hair, he put his hair over the front of his face, and he would look like Cousin It off of the Addams Family. You couldn't see his face. And he told the best jokes. And it was his goal to try to make me get out of character and laugh, because he would talk, he'd like, hey, look at that fan there in the third row. They got about 2 teeth in their mouth. Go look, Si, look. And I'm trying not to look. I'm working him and I'm trying not to laugh. He was like, Si, you really got to look. And I finally look and I said, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me, dude. And so it was just so much fun. Working King Kalua, my buddy who was doing the Hawaiian gimmick, you know, Mikey and I worked a lot up in with USWF, and I enjoyed working with him. Have a program with somebody for a period of time, your moves it's a thing of beauty. It's an art form. Professional wrestling is really an art form. There's no other way to describe it. But then finally, my career ended up, because the only reason I stopped in 2001, is I had one too many concussions. I was a risk taker in the ring, but I don't think I was over the top. I wouldn't do like falling off, jumping off of platforms like ECW and, some of these guys do. I just didn't want to put my body through that much torture, but I would take, big suplexes off the top rope. I would take somersaults and dive on somebody outside the ring. But that's, you're just really catching somebody and you're not really taking a big bump. But, there was a couple of moves that just, got botched. When I was working Larry Winters in upstate New York, it was like one of my last handful of matches. We were wrestling, I don't know if it was Auburn, New York, or Batavia, but we were wrestling at an outdoor minor league stadium. We were just going great, man. The crowd was into it. We took it outside the ring, and then he hit me, and he hit me in the face with some kids' nachos and cheese. But I said, Larry, he had the peppers, the jalapenos were still in there, and it's all over my face. The peppers are burning my eyes, and I can't see where he is. And I'm saying, Larry, come get me. He was like, what? I said, man, there was jalapenos in the thing that you get me. He's like, oh. So he grabs me, and then I said, let's go up toward the dugout. Yeah, I want you to give me a power driver. He said, no, Si. He said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. Don't say that. I said, come on, man. Let's go. We got this crowd working. Begrudgingly, he didn't want to do it. He just didn't want to do it. And he had given me 50 power drivers before. And we get up on top of the dugout, and family and friends, maybe just a little bit of my scalp may have been exposed through the bottom of his, through his thighs. And we hit the dugout, and I just remember I didn't see anything. And I couldn't remember, but I don't think I had blacked out for that long, because I can hear him asking me, you okay? You okay? I said, yeah, no, I'm fine. He was like, no, let's go back to the ring. And he's really just pulling me back toward the ring. And he told the referee, he says, I think Si's hurt. I said, no, I'm okay. I'm positive we wrestled another 10 minutes. And then we went home, and we took it home, meaning that we were going to finish the match. I was hurting. They wanted to pull me off the tour, but Bob Bailey, Robert Bailey and Kathy Bailey, they're two of my favorites. They were he was the owner of USWF, and Kathy ran the books and things like that. He came back to me in the locker room. He was like, Si, you okay? I said, Bob, I'm fine. He was like, you sure? He's like, I'm going to call your wife, Alicia. I was like, don't you dare call her. And I finished that tour, but when I went back home, we were living in Alexandria at the time. I went to the doctors, and my doctor knew I was a pro wrestler, and he loved it, but he was like, man, you've come in here with a few concussions. He was like, just imagine, you're not a football player or anything. You don't have a helmet. You don't have anything protecting your head, kid. You don't have anything. He was like, one more of these and that could be it for you. So begrudgingly, I just kind of phased out of professional wrestling. But I thought then I was really, truly getting into a groove and kind of developing a following. I think one of my last big matches was at Langley Air Force Base down in Hampton, Virginia, where I wrestled the Sheik and got the title back. And pretty much that was it after that. I was an investigator in DC at the time, and I was really, my security protection career was starting to take off. So that was it. I had a chance to go to Puerto Rico because I had really good demo videos. And the promoter, Carlos Colon down there, was really interested, but my daughter Sammy was really young at the time, so I just didn't think it was the right opportunity. So I just kind of faded into the background on professional wrestling. But I got a chance to travel with Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the Bushwhackers, the Iron Sheik, some of these really well-known individuals, and my dad got to see me wrestle. And we had Heineken's with the Iron Sheik one night in Youngstown, Ohio. My dad was on a dance floor at a nightclub with the Bushwhackers, and they said, "Mate, we love your dad." And it was just really, it was exciting, and it was great. It was just a great run. And I just recently was inducted into the USWF Hall of Fame, and I wanted to thank Bob and Kathy Bailey, TC Reynolds, my buddy Tom Buzanowski, who was on the board there, and I got selected last year. So it's fun, it's great, and it's very humbling to have your work acknowledged, for entertainment. But my professional wrestling career really paved the way for me to be a professional speaker. Because if you can do that and act a complete fool in front of strangers, I never had a problem lecturing at universities about international security. I'm a minister now, so I don't really feel like I can't give a grade A sermon or talk to people or counsel people. But professional wrestling was great. It was fantastic for me. It truly was the most fun I ever had, and it really did. It was a foundational building for me. I mean, it was how to be on TV, how to be on the radio, how to present yourself. It did a lot for me. There's a lot of people asking me. They said, "Or do you want to get back into the ring because I'm working out?" I say, "No, I don't want to get back into the ring. Trust me, I don't want to take that type of beating." I was really close to doing it a couple years ago because the late Joe Catanzarete was still promoting. And he said, "Sai, your physique looks pretty good, man." He was like, "I'll have you back in a minute doing that Sheik gimmick." And I thought about it. I really did. And I found a ring down south of Colorado Springs, and I worked out with these young kids in the ring. It felt good, but it didn't feel good the next day, and it didn't feel good the next week after that. I was so sore. So I told Joe, I was like, "Dude, I can't do this." I'm like, I had too long of a layoff. I don't want to go back in the ring and chance really hurting myself. And he understood. That's it. That was my career in professional wrestling. I wouldn't trade that, family and friends, for anything in the world. I want to say peace and love to all you. Again, those of you on the West Coast, man, I am praying hard, mighty prayers for you. And give them to me, too, and my family here, because we've got fires surrounding us as we speak. But this too shall pass, and hopefully we'll get back on track, and we'll get rid of this pandemic. And we'll kind of settle back in as a good society, because right now it doesn't feel right. It feels like we're off kilter, family, and I'm hoping that we get back on. So good night, peace and love. God bless you.